Hey friends, it is August 26th. It's good to be with you today, and it's one of those lessons that I had to fight for, and then when when it came to me, I was like, "Oh, you got something else?" Right? Because, well, so the message came. The message of the Lord spoken through Jeremiah was fulfilled. The land finally enjoyed Sabbath rest, laying desolate until the 70 years were fulfilled, just as the prophet said. It's kind of like wah wah. What good can come from the dust finally settling? What good can come from desolate? What good can come from finally? Right? Yeah, I thought all of those same things and exactly what you're thinking and more. I don't see the positive in this. And I was reminded of a couple things. First, it reminded me, the word dust reminded me of in the beginning when God formed man. And it reminded me of a worship song that I have grown to really love called Dust by Mac Brock, and I shared that with you today. And I thought of these two sometimes. Sometimes it takes destruction to bring us to rest. Sometimes we're so we're on autopilot of fight. We're on autopilot of living. We're on autopilot of surviving whatever the circumstance is, that sometimes it takes a final blow of destruction to come for us to finally experience rest. It's like a friend of mine I know who had turmoil in her marriage and her home for a very long time. And when her husband left, yes, it was devastating. It was the final blow. But there was a moment when there could be finally rest. I hope I'm making sense. Sometimes we have to come to the end of something before we can begin again. And then the Lord reminded me of this, that God's people had been in so many areas of disobedience, and one was the rest of the land. Do you remember that the land was supposed to have a Sabbath rest every 7 years? If you're a farmer, if you know farmers, you know that land has to have an off year. It has to have a year of not furrowing and not planting. And God commanded that to be the case with land, his land, and they never did that. And so the first point I think that we need to take from today's lesson is that we're going to jump from that point of this law, is that God needed to reset his people, but he also needed to reset the land, because he knew that there was going to be building again. He knew there was going to be planting again. He knew there was going to be life again. He knew they were coming back. And it was time that things got set back into place. The law of the land, the reset, the Sabbath rest of the land was finally put back into order. So when we get to that place of sometimes, that place of finally, that place of desolation where we can begin again, start by resetting things back in order in agreement with God's ways. Evaluate where perhaps things went the opposite of God's way, and work toward resetting that back to God's ways. Work at resetting yourself, resetting myself back in alignment with all of the ways that God has asked me to live. Renew the commitment that I have with God. Spend time renewing that. I know that when they were in captivity, we already studied this in Jeremiah 29, where God said, make yourself at home. Build your homes and plant your gardens, and marry your children. Let your children marry and let them produce and multiply. In other words, set yourself back in alignment with what's supposed to be. And in those moments, that's when we have that renewed commitment back to God, because we are connecting ourselves back to the way he wants us to live. And then lastly, I believe it's important when we're in this place when dust settles, is to remember that rebuilding is a process in becoming who we were designed to be. We've read about the potter and how the potter had to smash and start that piece of pottery over again. And that was symbolizing God and his people, and he's resetting and he's starting all over again. And sometimes he has to do that in our lives. Sometimes we have to be brought to that place of finally, a place where the dust settles, a place of desolation, because we have an ultimate goal that Peter talks to us about. You yourselves are like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. We have a building blueprint for our lives. And sometimes the master builder has to bring us to a place where we start over again and reset things back in order, so we can trust God with the dust. We can. And I know there's a lot in our class that are in that place of dust. There's a lot of rebuilding going on in a lot of our lives right now. And a lot of things seem final and complete and done. And how am I ever going to move forward and past this? Reset your ways in alignment with God's ways. Renew your commitment to God through prayer, through the study of His Word. Give the process time to work, because you are a spiritual house. You are a royal priesthood. That's what you are. That's what I am. And if it takes time to rebuild, to be redesigned, then that's okay. That's all part of the master design. Trust God with the dust. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.